It's Tuesday, April 13th, and this is now on H&N.
If you have any symptoms where you have pain and it's unexplainable, go to an emergency room right away.
Johnson & Johnson vaccines are being halted around the country. I'm Deborah Alfrone at the FDA with why and what's next.
The battle over beaches heats up as more visitors flock to the Valley Isle.
I went to my beach that I grew up out in Lahaina last week, and I could not get one stall. Every single stall was rental cars.
New at noon, Senator Hirono pushes for support on an Asian American hate crimes bill.
It does give me pause.
These stories plus will take you to the LPGA action in Kapolei. That's coming up on This Is Now. We begin today with some new video that may be disturbing to some viewers. Several sharks have been confirmed feeding on a whale carcass about 300 yards offshore at Sherwood's Beach in Waimanalo. This video is from our Hawaii News Now drone and was just sent into our newsroom a short time ago. Signs have been posted. We'll keep you updated on this still developing situation and bring that news to you on our H&N digital platforms.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for watching. This is Now. Ashley and Jonathan here. Let's get you those latest coronavirus numbers. The State Health Department is reporting 64 new cases today and no new fatalities. The breakdown by island shows 6 cases on the Big Island, 18 on Maui, 39 on Oahu, and 1 resident was diagnosed out of state. DOH also confirms that Hawaii has stopped administering the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine after the federal government recommended a pause in using the shots. Now, this will allow agencies to investigate rare blood clots associated with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Deborah Alfrone reports from outside FDA headquarters.
The FDA and CDC recommended a pause in use of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine over concerns of rare blood clots. But top White House health officials say there won't be a significant impact on vaccination efforts.
We have more than enough supply of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to continue the current pace of about 3 million shots per day.
Officials say there have been 6 reported cases of blood clots out of more than 6.8 million doses delivered. 1 woman has died. All 6 cases occurred in women between the ages of 18 and 48, and their symptoms developed 6 to 13 days after receiving the vaccination.
This is a really rare event if you look at what we know so far.
Federal health officials say those who've received the vaccine recently should seek medical attention if they develop any of these symptoms. They also warn using the drug heparin to treat the rare blood clot could be dangerous. The CDC will hold an advisory committee meeting on Wednesday to discuss the 6 cases and next steps. Meanwhile, Johnson & Johnson released a statement saying that there is no clear relationship between these rare events and the vaccine. The J&J pause also dominated Tuesday's weekly White House COVID response team conference call with state governors.
My hope would be that this is something that is a little bit of a speed bump.
Top administration health officials say the pause could last anywhere from days to weeks. Deborah Alfrone, CBS News, Silver Spring, Maryland.
So local clinics are already taking action about this. Sammy Selena continues our team coverage.
The news broke out overnight, but already this morning it was clear there was going to be an immediate local impact. We talked to CVS Longs, who said they're going to be pausing their J&J vaccinations.
But due to this pause, we were emailing all customers who have scheduled an appointment to receive a Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine at CVS Pharmacy to inform them that their appointment is being canceled.
As for Hawaii residents who already got the J&J shot, health experts say you will probably be okay, especially if you got it in the last couple months. But they say if you just received it in the last few days, monitor your health closely.
Now, there are some very specific symptoms that are associated with these side effects. It's severe headaches, abdominal pain, leg pain, and shortness of breath.
The pause will also impact distribution sites around the state, which relied on the J&J vaccine.
The J&Js are really important for Hawaii County because we are more rural. And a lot of times to get get those vaccines in the arms of the more rural, it's a little bit more difficult.
And I do hear of residents asking for the J&J vaccine. We currently do not have that one, but I do hear individuals requesting for that. And I think it's mostly because they prefer the 1-dose regimen versus the 2-dose.
So I'm hoping that folks will continue to be able to find what they need there, but I do think folks should need to be looking into it because it's going to be interesting to see what happens on April 19th.
We'll keep tracking the short and long-term fallout and its impact on Hawaii's vaccination efforts. Sammy Solina for This Is Now.
President Biden is planning to announce a full withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. Two people familiar with the plan say U.S. troops will withdraw by September 11th to mark a symbolic end to the longest war in American history. The Trump administration had set May 1st as the deadline, so this only extends the presence of U.S. troops for a matter of a few months. U.S. officials say there are currently about 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. Here's what the White House press secretary had to say about this morning.
But I will say that the president has been consistent in his view that there's not a military solution to Afghanistan, that we have been there for far too long. That has been his view for some time. Well documented, well reported on. He believes that, and he remains committed to supporting negotiations between the parties, which many of you may be following, are resuming next week. And he also believes we need to focus our resources on fighting the threats we face today, 20 years, almost 20 years after the war began.
So Biden is expected to deliver those remarks tomorrow from the White House.
Now, COVID-19 has been dominating news coverage since the pandemic started. So to give you an update on what's going on at the state legislature, joining us now is Hawaii News Now managing editor Daryl Huff. So what's going on over at the Capitol, Daryl?
Today's a good day to talk about this because it's what's called second cross. And that's where all the bills that have been mashing around from House to Senate come together, and then they go into conference committees where the details will be negotiated. And what's interesting this year from a wonky kind of point of view is that everything changed from the beginning of the session in January till now. You can imagine how much stuff has changed. At the beginning, they were looking at these huge deficits, shortfalls in the $2 billion range. And then in comes Biden and the Democrats, and all of a sudden, we're rich, we're rich. And so all of the fears about public worker furloughs, teachers getting laid off, cuts to education, all that stuff went off the wayside for the most part. So did a lot of other stuff, like efforts to diversify the economy and so on, because they were so tied up in the crisis of the budget. It just didn't allow them to do a lot of the stuff they wanted to do.
Were there any big issues, non-COVID related, that came up?
Not really. We were talking about minimum wage. Ultimately, that fell apart because even though the government was kind of restored, business is still struggling. And so the idea of hitting businesses with a minimum wage increase kind of petered out. There just really wasn't a lot of heat in this legislature. And I think that's what you saw. That's why we haven't had a whole lot of coverage of it. A lot of small issues here or there. Then what you have is sort of like these little artillery shells that one house will shoot at the other to try and provoke a conversation or make a deal. Like the most recent thing was the way the Senate decided to gut HTA, which angered the Hawaiian groups and so on, but it actually created this discussion finally about what's the role of HTA and what's the role of our tourism marketing and how does that fit into our overall effort to give us a new tourism, right? So nothing just blew up this year. And I think that was intentional. As leaders will just say, we got too much on our plate to deal with a big, explosive, difficult issue.
Have you talked to lawmakers about, how, they've been doing session virtually? Do they prefer this way compared to the old way of having people come into the building?
I've never asked the question exactly that way. What they talk about is how much more accessible their session is than it used to be. And that's true. It's really easy to write down a bill that you want to look at, then go back and look at the hearing. And you'll get more out of it than sitting there for hours waiting for your turn to testify. One thing that I think was interesting is that this legislature was also very reluctant to criticize the administration. For all that was going on, and all of the lack of transparency, the unemployment issues, the testing issues, the contact tracing issues, after last session where there was a lot of controversy, things just sort of percolated down to a steady state. And like, for example, the labor director, as far as I can tell, is going to get approved with hardly anybody complaining. I think some legislators were actually realizing that if they jump down the throat of the unemployment director, or they jump down the throat of the tax director, or they jump down the throat of somebody else, the easy answer is, well, you didn't give us any money to do this stuff, and now it all falls apart because you didn't give us any money to do this stuff. Don't blame me.
All right, HNN Managing Editor Daryl Huff, thanks so much. Jonathan, back to you.
Senator Mazie Hirono was part of a press conference today on the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. The legislation would allow the Department of Justice to expedite the review process of hate crimes against Asian Americans. It would provide resources to make it easier for people to report hate crimes and give funding to states to establish hate crime hotlines. Senator Hirono spoke about her personal experiences and the rise in violence against the AAPI community.
As an AAPI person, it does give me pause. If I was walking around outside, I would have my earbuds on, I'd be listening to books on tape. I would never do that now because of the incidents of totally unprovoked hate crimes against AAPIs.
So we've learned that ride-sharing companies are making some changes to deal with driver shortages. Lacey Denise has those details, new at noon.
Throughout the pandemic, Uber and Lyft drivers didn't have much work due to most people staying at home. But in 2021, those ride-hailing companies are optimistic about a return to business as almost usual. Problem is, many of the drivers who power those on-demand rides aren't active or even logged into the platforms anymore. So in response, Lyft and Uber are spending big money to reverse the driver shortage. Uber recently announced a $250 million driver stimulus in the U.S. to boost pay with more incentives and wage guarantees. And according to the rideshare guy blog, its rival Lyft has also been offering bonuses in different American cities. Data from app analytics firm Uptopia found the number of daily active users on the Lyft and Uber driver-only apps for the past 3 months dropped 42.3% and 37.5% respectively compared to the year before. For This Is Now, I'm Lacey Denise.
Nearly 14,000 travelers arrived on Maui this past weekend. That's near pre-pandemic levels, and some say that's too many too fast. Jolani Martinez has more on the rising tension.
The frustration is real. One community advocate we spoke with isn't blaming the tourists for overcrowded beaches, restaurants, and roads. She says county and state leaders failed to create a more balanced reopening plan for the community.
I can honestly say that when everything was closed, it was probably the most spiritual time of my life. Being able to experience these beaches that I grew up on without tourists, just seeing life be restored.
Community advocate Tiare Lawrence says it's been overwhelming on Maui. She finds herself sitting in traffic again and having little luck finding parking.
I went to my beach that I grew up out in Lahaina last week, and I could not get one stall. Every single stall was rental cars.
This photo taken April 1st shows Wailea Beach packed with umbrellas, which resort critics say improperly reserved the beach for tourists. It ignited a protest called Take Back the Beach, where families spent the day at the beach with signs and beach chairs organized by Kai Nishiki.
By no means am I saying that we shouldn't have tourism at all. It's just that we want it to be managed. We want it to be in balance.
We have been telling the administration for years that we need quality over quantity.
Although state and county leaders had months to prepare a reopening plan for tourism, visitor arrivals are nearing pre-pandemic levels. Mayor Victorino says he's looking at ways to limit the influx.
We have a certain impactive point in our economy. We've got to protect our resources. So we are looking at different methods of continuously leveling off and not so many visitors at any given time.
Professor Jerry Agrusa of UH Manoa's School of Travel Industry Management says one way to both cap visitors and maximize income is incorporating a high season tax.
Raise the price some way, maybe put in a COVID charge, COVID tax just during this high season, and use that money to help the beach, the parks, clean the beaches, the bathrooms, paper towels, security at the beaches, these things, then people will say, okay, tourist is coming, make the tourist pay. We have to have the tourist pay.
Others want to generate revenue outside of tourism altogether.
I wish they would just put politics aside and just make our diversifying our economy a major priority.
And that was our Jolani Martinez reporting. Let's get a look at just how crowded those beaches are right now here on the North Shore. There is Waimea Bay, not looking too crowded.
Yeah.
Quite a few people out there, but I wouldn't call it overcrowded by any means here. But you know what? One place where there is seeing some certain action today is on the west side with all that LPGA play, and that's where Guy Hoggy is. Let's get an update on that and the weather from him.
Yesterday was the Pro-Am day. Today is a regular practice day, and the tournament does get underway tomorrow. Now, as far as the weather, it is absolutely gorgeous out here right now, and that's expected to continue tomorrow. So breezy trade winds today running 15 to 20 miles an hour, and that'll continue tomorrow. Lots of sunshine expected, very little rain. If anything, a few minor splashes for those Windward and Mauka areas in the early morning and overnight hours. But things are going to change in that we're going to get lighter winds starting on Thursday, and those light trade winds will continue into the weekend. The next chance for meaningful rainfall likely coming between Friday and Saturday. A front's going to drop in. A front's going to be rather weak, but we will see an increase in those Windward and Mauka showers between Friday and Saturday, drying up again on Sunday. But all in all, we're in for a beautiful run, a long run of great weather. And I'm talking to PGA Pro and the Kapolei General Manager, Gordy Walker. Good morning, Gordy.
Guy, thanks so much for coming out to Kapolei today.
Yeah,
Appreciate
well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Now, we're not wearing masks because we're outside and we're distanced. So, Gordy, for people that don't know about Kapolei, the golf club here, give us a little bit of an overview of what the course is like and what the pros will be facing.
Sure, yeah. So Kapolei was built and opened in the early 90s. It's a great golf course to play for both the pros and for amateurs. I would say for Kapolei, when you're playing, it's more of a second shot style golf course, meaning that the fairways are relatively generous.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, it is for me too, because I don't hit the ball straight. But the thing is, it's a second shot golf course, meaning that it places an emphasis on the approach shot into the green. You need to be very precise when you hit your ball into the green.
And those greens a little smaller than average?
They're a touch smaller than average, and they've got some undulation to them, guys. So there's only so many places where they can put pins. The greens are going to be rolling good out there this week.
Yeah, and the course is always in great shape, but you guys only had a small turnaround time to get it up to LPGA standards. Talk about the challenges there.
We did, yeah. Thanks for asking about that. It has certainly had some challenges, but the team here really rose to the challenge. I would say about a couple months ago, we learned that we were going to host the event, and it was very exciting, but we knew we had a lot to do. So getting the facility ready, the clubhouse and everything, the clubhouse surrounds, as well as the turf grass. Really, the golf course is the star of the show here, and I got to give kudos to our superintendent, Bill Lucena, for doing a heck of a job and ramping up his team and getting the grass looking beautiful and green, and the greens running really smooth and fast.
All right, Gordy Walker, thanks for hosting us.
The Oscars will not be aired in Hong Kong this year. The awards show is the latest victim in Beijing's political crackdown. Will Ripley has more.
This year's Academy Awards off the air in Hong Kong.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hollywood's biggest night won't be broadcast in the Chinese territory for the first time since 1968, more than half a century, even with 2 Hong Kong films nominated. The city's leading broadcaster, TVB, tells CNN the Oscar blackout is purely a business decision. Political scientist Willie Lam believes it's much bigger than business.
Well, the extent of censorship and self-censorship in Hong Kong for the past few years has been stunning. They do not want to show anything which is considered to be politically incorrect. So that's why they would better err on the side of caution.
Caution, he says, over comments made by Beijing-born director Chloe Chow. Her film Nomadland, nominated for 6 Oscars,
including Best Picture of the Year.
Director Zhao did an interview many years ago in which she expressed doubts about the censorship system in China.
Lam believes Chinese media regulators are also wary of do not split. an Oscar-nominated documentary about the 2019 Hong Kong protests.
I'm surprised how fast it's possible to change the city. And now you see all these examples of how these basic human rights, from my point of view, are disappearing.
Hong Kong has charged dozens of pro-democracy activists and former lawmakers under its draconian national security law imposed by Beijing last year. The city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, says the law also applies to the arts, potentially muzzling movie makers in a city once called Hollywood of the East.
This is the Avenue of Stars, modeled after the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And this is the statue for the Hong Kong Film Awards, kind of like the Oscars, but only Hong Kong films. This town's movie business peaked about 3 decades ago.
Martial arts legend Bruce Lee received the Star of the Century Award from the Hong Kong Film Awards in 2005. More than 30 years after his untimely death, at 32, Lee set the stage for another Hong Kong star, Jackie Chan, who took home an honorary Oscar 5 years ago. And this year, the first Academy Award nomination for a Hong Kong-born director for Derek Song's film, Better Days. The best days of Hong Kong cinema may be over, critics fear, if creative freedom, like the Oscars, is silenced. Will Ripley, CNN, Hong Kong.
More entertainment news for you. This time we're talking about another one of those awesome celebrity auctions that you can get in on. And it's Janet Jackson we're talking about. Yep, you can bring the Rhythm Nation home to your very self. The legendary singer is auctioning off over 1,000 personal items, including a wedding dress, and I was really surprised by this, the outfit she wore in the Scream video with Michael Jackson, her brother. Yeah, the event will take place at the beginning beginning May 14th, and part of the proceeds will help a global children's charity.
What about that infamous Super Bowl uniform?
Oh, yeah,
Right?
I don't know.
So Shazam faces off against one of Charlie's Angels.
What?
Lucy Liu has been cast in Shazam! Fury of the Gods as the villainous Calypso, who's the daughter of a Greek god. Now, she joins Helen Mirren and Zachary Levi in the upcoming sequel, which is scheduled to open in June 2023. This is a superhero movie. I had to look it up.
Yeah, I've heard of it, the franchise, but I haven't seen her in a while, and I love her. She's so great.
Yeah. And New York City's annual Met Gala is returning in person with 2 big events, one in September, the other in May, after canceling in 2020 because of the pandemic. Now, the smaller fall event celebrates the 75th anniversary of the Met's Costume Institute with an exhibit that focuses on how people use clothing to express themselves. The larger Spring Gala launches an exhibit in collaboration with American film directors. Now, the annual fundraiser attracts a combination of celebrities, fashionistas, sports figures, and socialites, and we see a lot of good outfits and fashion.
Amazing. I love the Cinderella one. That's so spectacular.
Yeah, and here at home, this event typically draws thousands of people to Ala Moana Beach Park, but there will be no large Shinyo lantern floating ceremony along the shore this year. Instead, there will be a special broadcast on Monday, May 31st, that's Memorial Day, on KGMB and at lanternfloatinghawaii.com. And organizers are also having interactive virtual events, so they're inviting people to share remembrances and prayers on a large-scale lantern at Shinyo in Hawaii on Veritania Street and on their website.
All right, that's going to do it for This Is Now. We'll be back here tomorrow. Don't forget to catch Ashley on Cage Now, first at 4. Bye, guys.